Okay, so what I'd like to talk about now is backups. Now, when we talk about backups, there are different ways of backing things up. The first way is what's called a turnkey backup. A turnkey backup is where you have to do virtually no work to get your backup up and running. You don't have to read manuals, you don't have to troubleshoot things, you don't have to follow a bunch of different steps. It's literally, doop, and you're back up and running. An example of a turnkey backup could be, let's say you have your PBX with your hard drive in it and it has all your settings and everything on it. Let's say you clone that hard drive using a tool like DD-Rescue. This is a really basic, bare bones, primitive method of turnkey backup solutions, but let's say you clone that hard drive and you take that cloned hard drive and you put it in the exact same server hardware. So let's say something goes wrong with your PBX. You literally take this backup server, you plug it in, and you're done. That's a turnkey backup solution. A mess of a backup solution is what I'm actually going to show you here. So there are many ways to do turnkey backup solutions. You can have virtualized servers. You could back up the instance of your virtualized server. So let's say the hardware dies, the software dies, everything goes to shit. You can just bring that instance back up on different server hardware and it will work exactly as it did before. There's lots of cool ways that you can do this. So I'm going to show you an example of a not-so-turnkey backup. And what I want you to understand when you see the word backup, the main point I'm trying to get home here is that when you see the word backup, a lot of people assume that, oh, it's a backup. I'm backed up. I'm good, right? And they're set. They don't think that they have to check and make sure it works. The main point I want to get across, if I get anything across of this entire series, is make sure that the backup and restore functionality of your server, of your software, of whatever it is you're working with, actually works. So what I would do is I would actually cause a catastrophe and then try to fix it using my backup, and I want to see exactly how painful it is. I want to see how turnkey or not turnkey it is so that I understand what I'm in for. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show you with a different PBX box how I would save the backup. So what I'm going to do here is open up a window and log into a PBX and save a backup. Now the thing is, as I said, I'm getting 2 drives to put in that machine in RAID 1. I'm not going to use the 1 drive configuration, so I do actually have to reinstall FreePBX from scratch and then restore everything from the setup that I've just created and make a few tweaks to the passwords, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the backup and restore plugin within FreePBX to do this. Now that's not exactly as turnkey as you might imagine. And again, I want to do a real-time example of how this works here so that you can see, you can understand what I'm talking about. I don't want you to look at the backup button and assume that once you hit backup and you have a file that you're done. Because one of the things that a lot of people make money at in the IT world is disaster recovery. So something goes wrong, how long does it take to get that person back up and running? And if you just think that, oh, I have a backup file, I'm done. Well, what about the time it takes to reset up the server so that you can use that backup file? What about the time it takes to figure out how to make that backup file actually work once the server is back up? These are a lot of things that people don't really think about, and they're really important when it comes to mission-critical applications and mission-critical servers. Again, the most basic primitive example of a turnkey backup solution is having a duplicate server with a drive in it that has all the same information the first one had on it. Obviously, this is not something that is really practical. It's not practical to have duplicates of all your hardware, nor is it really practical to be cloning a drive constantly. That's obviously silly. But I just bring it up as a very basic example of what a turnkey backup is. A turnkey backup is somebody says, I'm down, you go, okay. Here you go, you plug in a few wires and you're done. And you want to be as close to that as you possibly can. And if you're not as close as you possibly can be to a turnkey backup solution, that's okay as long as you understand in your head exactly what you're in for so that when you go to restore from your backup, everything works. So to stop blabbering and actually get onto some work, let's log into a different PBX IP here and we're going to just use this as a backup. So I logged in. I go admin, I'm going to go backup and restore, I'm going to go my free PBX backup. Let's actually make a new backup just for the hell of it. We might as well make a new different type of backup. So I'm going to go to backups and I'm going to click new backup. I'm going to call this backup for camera. Backup for camera since I am doing this for YouTube. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on full backup and I'm going to drag it in here. Now keep in mind that full backup does not back up a lot of the voicemails and things of that nature. So if you want to back up voicemails and call recordings, if you want to do that, you will have to drag that stuff separately. Now, if you want to back up voicemails and things of that nature, you will have to drag those separately. I don't want to back up voicemails because all my test voicemails here were jokes. I don't need to back up me yelling into my voicemail test for this person. Then you have where is the backup going to be located? And this is where you can be really creative with your backup using this module. So I can set a local storage, I can set it to back up someplace else, I can set it up to back up to this local server, and then after it's done being backed up to this local server, I can do really cool things, like have it back up, I can have it automatically using cron tab, I can set up something called rsync to copy my backup files to an FTP server, I can set it up to automatically copy my files to a file share, I can set it up to automatically send my stuff to Google Drive, I can set it up to automatically back up things from the computer to a cloud storage-based solution by mounting the cloud storage solution on a Linux box. One thing to understand, since this is a Linux distribution, FreePBX is based on CentOS, is that any of the cool things you could do with a basic Linux computer to share files back and forth, and the tools like rsync to copy back and forth, and tools like crontab to choose when it is you're going to have a task run, you have access to all of those tools here. So whether you want to just have it back up to the local box, or have it back up somewhere on your local network, or have it send to the cloud, or whatever kind of cool backup solution you want, you can create it however you want. But the cool thing I want you to understand here is that being a basic Linux computer is that you don't have to go nuts relearning how to do all this stuff. If you have any basic server administration skills in Linux, then you'll find it very simple to come up with a backup solution for your PBX. You don't have to read into a new convoluted manual, nor do you have to figure out how some vendor's proprietary system works. You're using basic tools that if you're a Linux user, you're already used to using. You already know how to mount Samba shares. You already know how to mount SIA IFS shares. You already know how to mount cloud storage solutions on your Linux box as a directory, and then rsync to that directory using crontab and have it set up so it automatically is checking. And you already know how to do that. And if you don't, you should read up on how to do that stuff, because it's a very useful skill set to have if you're a Linux user and if you administer servers. Now, my backup should be ready at this point, so I'm going to go back to the screen here. Now, at this screen, I am going to let it save my backup. I'm going to tell it to run the backup automatically once a week and to delete it every 12 backups just so it doesn't get huge. I'm going to hit save over here, and then I'm going to hit end run. Now it's done running. So here's what I'm going to do from here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to log into my PBX box. I'm going to log in as the root user. But the thing is, I don't want to be regularly logging in as the root user, because that's a bad habit, and I don't want you to develop bad habits. So what I'm going to do is add a generic user named backup. And from there, I'm going to set his password to something secure. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in using FTP. Using my backup user. I'm going to set it to port 22 for SSH. Now I can go in here I actually have to remember where it stores the damn backups. Ah, duh. It's not varlib asterisk backups anymore. That's an older version. Here we go. I'm old. See how old I am? And in this directory, you'll have a backup file. Now, I already have a backup file over here that I created prior, so I'm going to use the backup file that I created prior. I have no reason for this one. But that's how you would get the file off of the server if you're just using an FTP client the way I am. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to reinstall the free PBX server onto my Think server's RAID array. Then I'm going to use the backup file that I had created earlier to restore it. And I'm going to go through the things that work and the things that don't. Because again, I don't, the whole thing I want to get in your head, not just with setting up a PBX, but general IT, is that when you see a backup button and you see a restore button, I want you to understand the ramifications of using that system. I want you to understand that you need to know whether or not that's turnkey or misery. Because there's really only two different types of backups. There's turnkey and there's misery. There's it works and there's it works, but you have to fuck with it. And if you have to fuck with it, again, it may be a working system, but disaster recovery. People are going to be waiting on you to recover this. Sometimes it's an office of one person where, sometimes it's an office of 10,000 people where, yeah, this stuff really does matter. So you need to know how to set up these systems so that when you need to back something up or you need to restore something, it's instant. And I want to show you what the value is of having something like a virtualized instance, which I'm not going to go over here, versus this type of backup. The coolest thing about virtualized instances or clone of a hard drive is that everything is already set up. You're taking the setup that you had that worked. You're literally taking that setup and you're putting it over here. And when you need that setup again or something goes wrong, you take what you have over here and you put it over there. You're not writing the config files in manually. You're not clicking restore and praying that the stuff actually works. It just works because you're taking, again, you had this, it worked. You moved it over here, and now you're moving it back. Think of using these backup and restore modules as kind of going clink, 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 taking all the little individual pieces and putting them over there, and then the backup module and the restore module is going to take all those little pieces and put them back where they were. But there's always a chance that one piece doesn't go back the way it's supposed to. And again, this does happen. WordPress websites, this happens. Security camera systems, this happens. PBX servers, this happens. And I want you to see on camera what happens when I try to use this module. I haven't used the most recent version of PBX for backing up, but I have backed up and restored from the older versions, and trust me, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're back, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to reset up my PBX using my easy backup and restore module. So I just browsed over, I reinstalled everything. Let's just set a password here and a username. And let's make it all nice and happy, right? So it's nice and happy. We're going to log in, nice and happy. I'm not going to set up a thing. I'm not going to touch a single setting on here before I do my restore from my backup because I don't want to mess anything up. So we're going to go to admin, backup and restore, and I'm going to choose my backup file over here. I'm going to restore it. I'm just going to back up my directories, my PBX settings, and my CDRs. Restore. So it says that I should run this to ensure system integrity. So I'm going to log in via SSH over here. And wait for that to be done first, though. Okay, so it says reloading done. Let's ensure system integrity. Up to date, awesome. I hit X over here. Let's click on something. Oh, look, an apply config button. I've always told you you need your apply config button, right? Oh, whoops. Reload failed because retrieve_conf encountered an error. Do you see what I mean by turnkey? Do you want to be in a server room with 20 people staring at you saying, when can we start making money again? When can we start making money again? And see this? You don't. because I had a setup that worked perfectly fine. And now I have this. So let's try to troubleshoot this. And this is what I want to get across. I'm including this in the video because I want you to understand. I want it to get through your skull that you need to that you need to know that your backup and restore solution for anything that you're working on actually works. It's not enough to have a backup file. It's not enough to have a pretty interface. You need to be familiar with it, and you need to have actually used it to have restored a system that stopped working. So let's run something here. Retrieve.conf. So let's see the error that it tells me. So it says I should check on the main page. Let's go to the main page. So it tells me on the main, let's see. Well, the main page doesn't tell me shit. It says retrieve comp failed because of an error 1. That sucks. So this is why knowing the command line and knowing, what you're doing in a terminal is really helpful in Linux, because that doesn't tell me a thing. I don't know what that means. So I'm going to try to run that script and see what it says. All right. So you see what it says here? What it says here is that it's trying to log into the SQL database with the free PBX user, and access is denied, most likely because the password is wrong for the database, and the database name is CDRDB. So for the CDRDB database, my username and my password is wrong. All right. So again, this is the thing. This is what I'm talking about. So if I go free PBX, backup, and restore. Keep in mind, I didn't buy any extra modules. I didn't set up any extra modules. I've done nothing special here. Every single module here is literally a module that comes on the basic default installation. Nowhere here does it say anything about CDRDB. It doesn't say a thing. No control F. So this is one of the other reasons that I can't stand manuals either, because manuals are made by people who already know how everything works. Since they know how everything works, they assume that you know certain things that you may not know. So if you simply assume, oh, look, I have a backup and restore button. Oh, look, I have a backup file. I'm set. Well, what they're not going to tell you is that you're still going to have to screw with it a little bit when you're done, which is why, again, don't assume anything works until you test it for yourself. And secondly, don't trust the manual. Again, the reason that I don't use instruction manuals for almost everything that I do is because the manual is always written from the standpoint of somebody who already knows everything. So the manual is always leaving out the information that I actually want. The questions I want answered are never in the manual. They're never there. Look, let's see. If I were to search for error 1, which is a great error code, by the way. That's a really verbose error. It's not there. Again, the manual never answers the questions that I want answered. So let's go over to advanced settings here. Now, one of the things you're going to notice in advanced settings is that we can make certain options appear that are hidden at the moment. So I think there are certain options in here that are actually hiding until I tell them to show up. Now I can't change that because my apply config button doesn't work. So I'm kind of in a catch-22 because I need to display one of those read-only settings. So let's go back and get some context here. So when I run this, it's trying to use this password, right? This is the password that it's trying to use. So what I can do here is I can log into the MySQL database and change the password that is existing there with this one. But that is a bit of a pain in the ass. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to SSH into my old PBX, which thank God is still here. And get that old password out. The old password, so what I have to do here is change the password to the database. So see here it says amp dbpass. What I have to do here is change it to what the old password was for any of this stuff to actually work. Well, that's just fun. Okay. So let me show you what I'm going to do here. So that free PBX file actually holds the password to the SQL database, right? Now, the problem is that when I go to this file here, what it's doing is it backed up the password. See what it did here? It backed up the database password that I had on my old computer. So this here is the password for the new machine, actually. So this here is the password for the new machine. This is the password for this current machine. So let's just put that back over here. And when I do that, trying to actually log on to this will work. See? Now the problem is that some shit is still using that old password. So I have to figure out where this pile of crap password is actually still in the database. And I have to replace it with this one. This is the password for that was generated, right? So I have to change this shit. So what I have to do is I have to log on somewhere in the database and find every single place that this old password is being used. And that really sucks. That's not fun. So let's figure out what we're doing here. So we're going to log on to the MySQL database. Again, this stuff is really not fun, but this is, again, if you don't, you're going to have to figure this out. You rather figure it out now than figure it out in front of clients, that's for sure. So let me just make it so that you can see the window. All right, so that looks a little nicer. So now we're going to go MySQL u free PBX user p, and we're going to enter that silly password. And again, it's not going to be anybody's fault but your own that you didn't figure this out. As silly as it seems that you have to do this to use a basic module for backup, personally, I think it's silly. At the same time that I think it's silly, you know what other people are going to say? They're going to think it's silly that I didn't know this. That's the thing with IT. You're responsible for all this stuff. So now I have to change the database I'm in. Actually, let's check the list of the databases here. Okay, so we have asterisk CDRDB. Now, asterisk CDRDB was the database that we were trying to log into and failing. Remember? So here, let me just show you in another window. That was what was giving me the bullshit. See up here where it was failing and it says DB name asterisk CDRDB. We should change the password for both databases anyway. But let's just use the asterisk database for now, and then I'm going to change it in asterisk CDRDB as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to update free PBX underscore settings set value equals the new password is going to be this thing. No, that's not the password. All right, let me just open a window to get that password. Okay, the new password is going to be this. Value equals this, where value equals this old shit password. This is bullshit. Like, this really should be plug and play. And again, I can't really complain. The reason I can't complain is because this entire system is 100% free. Like, it is completely free. So you can't complain about shit that's free. you know, you just can't. So the password that's trying to log into is that one. So we change it. I forgot my semicolon. You always have to have your semicolon. Oh, what did I do? I spelled something wrong, didn't I? Wait, I repeated myself, didn't I? I did repeat myself. Okay, we're just gonna put this in like this. I need to get some breakfast. I'm hungry. It's killing me. Let's see. What did I do? Why don't you like my syntax here? Well, let me just type this out in another window so I can. Okay. Alright, so it was in the asterisk database, not the asterisk CDRDB database. So now that that value has changed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to run that same script again that was screwing me up before. And see? Now it runs. That's bullshit. I mean, that is the definition of bullshit right there. See, that's not turnkey. And nobody mentions that in the manual. Show me where in the manual it says that you'll have to do that. Show me where in the manual it says that you're going to have to change things from your SQL server. It's not here. I could read the whole thing to you out loud. It ain't there. But anyway, there's no point in crying over these things. Let's check the pages over here and let's see what happens if I hit the button. When I hit the apply button works. What do you know? So let's see what happens if I check out, let's say, outbound routes. Yeah, see, it saved my stuff. It's all here. This is great. This is good stuff. So now what I want to do is I want to see if I can actually call myself. Because if I can call myself, that means that all this junk actually worked. That's the important part here. Now what I want you to see over here is when I go to settings and advanced settings, what I can do is I can click true on display read-only settings and also override the read-only settings, and then I can change the CDRDB database password from here. But I can't do that when I hit apply. And again, what I'm going to do now, I've reset everything. You saw what I did. Now I'm going to call the phone number and I want to see if it rings. If it rings, that means that all my settings were saved and that everything that I did actually worked. And yes, I do need to change that asterisk manager and host password. Now you hear that phone ringing in the background? You know what that means? It means that everything was restored. But do you see what a pain in the ass that was? Do you see how all the issues that we encountered doing the most basic thing were not issues that were showed in the manual? Again, I am not using third-party extensions. Hell, I'm not even using first-party modules that are not supported or like literally activated with the distribution. Everything we went over here was the most basic, bare-bones setup. And when we went to back that setup up and then restore it, you run into random issues. Again, if you want to back up and restore a system for a client, you should never, ever, ever have to go through the mess that I just went through. You want something that's instant. So this is where the value of having a turnkey setup comes in. This is where you want to start thinking about things like having a virtualized instance of your PBX and then just being able to bring up that instance if anything fails. I want you to understand the value in these things. That's why I'm showing you this module. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I've used a lot of different versions of free PBX in the past. I've never used the most recent backup and restore module. I never had that problem before. I had different problems. I'm not going to say I didn't have problems. I had different problems, but I had to do the same thing I had to do here. I had to sit down for half an hour and figure it out. And yeah, by yourself, sure, figure that stuff out. But you're going to have to come up with a better way to restore your systems when you have 10 or 20 or 30,000 people saying, hi, our phones don't work. When can these 30,000 people go back to work instead of draining our payroll? You know, this stuff is important, and you have to think about it. And I want you to be aware of it. You have to come up with your own solution. That's not for me to do for you. What I'm doing here is I'm just giving you the foundation that you can use to, and the knowledge, and just the kind of the thought process that you need to have in your head. But figuring out the solution, that is your journey. And I hope that that we've gone over enough here that you feel comfortable going on that journey. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try to reply when I have a chance. Try to not make them ridiculously general, something that requires pages and pages of response, because if you do, I may not get the time to view it. Again, this is not the only way to set something up. All I wanted to do is go through the basic process from beginning to end. I wanted to show you a working setup, not the best setup, but simply a setup that works and how we get there. Again, change all your passwords. Don't use default passwords. Don't use default anything. And don't try to log in using any of the passwords you see here, because these things have all been long changed before this even so much as got to video editing. The main thing that I want you to take away from this entire experience is that you need to understand how your backup system works, and you need to have actually recovered your system from a disaster before you put it out into the world. So I want you to know how your backup and how your restore system works to the point where you could do it with your eyes closed, where there's not going to be any surprises, because you're going to have enough surprises getting thrown at you if you need to recover one of these systems from a disaster, or recover it when something stops working. So you need to understand what little nuances there is going to be, like, you know, it not copying over a database password, or it copying over a database password that it shouldn't have. Now, even though I think this is bullshit, it's something that after you do once, you'll be able to do next time. Next time I'll know that that's the problem as soon as I see it. So it doesn't matter if there's 30,000 people staring at me saying, when will we be back up and running? Because I'm not going to get nervous. I've done it before. But if you've never tried to restore from your backup solution before, and you try for the first time and you run into some bullshit like what I just ran into, then again, you're going to start losing it. You're going to lose your cool, and you know the stress is going to start coming on you. I've been there before. And again, this is not just for PBX systems. This is for everything. If you are putting a system out there into the world, you need to have some type of fail-safe. You need to unplug it from the wall while it's on and plug it back in, create a little disaster, and then see if the backup or whatever it is you've put together to make sure that works actually works. If you're putting up a UPS and you're putting it in front of a bunch of servers, you need to unplug it from the wall while all the servers are on to make sure that the UPS is actually working. Same thing's true here. If you get anything from this video, it's that you need to make sure that your backup solution actually works after you hit backup. It's not just about hitting backup and seeing that the backup is happening. It's about actually destroying your system and then restoring it to make sure that your backup solution actually works, because a lot of the times you're going to realize that your backup solution doesn't work and that there are surprises, and I want you to be prepared for them.